I'm Krista. Thanks to the folks who spoke earlier, and big thanks to Alex for organizing. I'm from the Thetford Conservation Commission, and we recently updated our town lands management plan. Let's see how to advance the slides. So Thetford has 4 town-owned parcels that are conserved. They cover about 560 acres. It's a variety of habitats, and the Conservation Commission is tasked with stewarding each of these parcels. There are 9 of us on the commission. A few of them are here today. And so we have split up these parcels so that 2 to 3 members are in charge of kind of monitoring each of the 4 parcels. So the Town Lands Management Plan was last written in 2008, and it's meant to be updated every 10 to 15 years. So that's now. And so our goal was to kind of take stock of each property and get a sense of how well the previous management plan had been working out, whether there were any new threats to the ecosystem, and then also to think about what do we want these parcels to look like into the future. And so we would kind of merge those 2 things into developing a plan. And as we did that, we came to these 2 overarching goals: resilience and long-term carbon storage. So as we know, there's just a lot of new diseases out there. There's droughts, there's floods, there's all sorts of climate catastrophe happening. And so how can we make our forests resilient to those upcoming changes? And then also long-term carbon storage. So we talked a lot about developing quote unquote old growth like conditions in our forests to be able to store carbon into the future. So how did we get there? It took a long time. We started over a year ago, and the first step was really to take stock of all of the existing guidance that was out there. So we spent some time reviewing the previous town lands management plan, the town plan, our natural resources inventory, our wetlands inventory. We wanted to make sure we understood what was out there already, and make sure that the guidance we were developing for the future was in line with the guidance that already existed, so that we weren't recreating the wheel. And then we worked with the Orange County Forester, who collected field data at each of the sites. And then this next step took us the longest amount of time. It took us probably 4 to 6 months of really refining the recommendations for each property. So when the forester came back to us, we dove deep into each of the properties and had really good discussions at our meetings about are these actions that are reasonable to take? Are they cost effective? Are they going to help us achieve our goals? Do we think they'll be supported by the town? And there was one parcel that was kind of the trickiest to navigate, because we were recommending a selection treatment of some old sick white pines in order to make room for new growth and carbon sequestration. And so because there was some pushback in the town about that, it forced us to really have those good conversations with people and be really solid in our reasoning. And I just think it was a really great community process. Then we had a public input process. We had public walks. We had a public interest survey, which was distributed at the town meeting and online. And then we took all that public input and made a final draft, and we're really excited about where it is. And now we're kind of moving into this next phase of recruiting volunteers to help implement the plan and host some work days. So that's where we are now. And in terms of volunteers, there's kind of 2 different things happening at once. So there's recruitment. So like I mentioned, we conducted a survey in the spring related to the town lands management plan. So that was getting input from people on how they use these properties, what kinds of things do they want to see in the future on these properties. And then we also snuck in a question at the end: do you want to volunteer with us? And so that was a great, easy way to develop our volunteer list. We got more than 70 responses. We're continuing to grow our email list. And then we've also got some new social media accounts. They're still in their infancy, but I think we're kind of trying to reach a different audience than we would traditionally just reach on our town listserv. And then in terms of the program setup, we developed a liability waiver that took us a little while and was a really good opportunity to think through some questions in advance that would have come down the line. So can minors volunteer with us? Can minors use chainsaws? Do minors need to have a parent coming with them? You know, all those kinds of questions we kind of tried to address in advance. And then we developed volunteer job descriptions so that folks have a really clear idea of like, okay, if I'm going out to volunteer and help with boundary marking, what does that mean? How long can I expect to be out? What do I need to bring? And then we have one person on the commission who's going to kind of be in charge of volunteer recruitment and organization. And then the parcel specific Conservation Commission members that I mentioned earlier will be the ones that run those volunteer sessions. And importantly, our Tiny Grant funds are being used to purchase supplies for those volunteer activities. So paint brushes for boundary lines, maybe some new signs for some of these areas, and then other equipment like loppers and that kind of stuff. So we haven't started quite yet. This fall is going to be our first volunteer session. But we're really excited to see this process come kind of full circle from a year ago when we sat down with the old plan and we were like, what the heck are we doing, to now where we have this really well-developed plan that I hope will kind of outlive all of us, not outlive, but you know, have some staying power in the next 10 to 15 years. And hopefully it will help engage a lot of folks in town so that we can keep taking care of these properties that we love. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Krista. Really great to hear about how you all are thinking through recruiting volunteers and using them in your work. I know that's something that many conservation commissions are dealing with and thinking about how to recruit and retain and really utilize volunteers in your communities. So hopefully folks are taking some good lessons from that.